if I were to advise someone on whether or not to start up,
Yeah.
right, I would strongly say that just know your situation well and be more patient than how much you have ever been in your past. Because this journey might take a lot of time. It might take n number of experiments before you figure it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, my next guest is the co-founder and CEO of Olik. Olik helps large-scale retailers like Decathlon and IKEA bring circularity to their businesses. He is none other than Ashish Jain. Now, in this episode, we talk about everything when it comes to running a B2B SaaS business, bringing on such huge, big name clients to a very early stage startup and how to do that. We also talk about the inspiration that he took from the Baniya community in building his business, the ethos behind it, and most importantly, what do you tell your partner or your family when you start on the journey of building your own startup? This episode is completely packed with a lot of information, so make sure you watch to the end of this episode and tell me what you would like to see more. Put your feedback on the comments below. Now, on to the show. Okay, Ashish, welcome to the Out of Office show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here.
I'm so glad we finally made it because I think when I had conceptualized the show, I had made a list of people who I want to bring onto the show, and you were in that list.
Wow, it's truly a pleasure, and I am absolutely delighted to be here today and have a conversation.
Great. Okay, so let's start with something very simple. How are you?
I am absolutely well, and thanks for asking me. It's been a really busy but exciting time, juggling with managing the growth at Oleg, being a new father, as you know, and managing everything else in life. But at the same time, I'm truly grateful for all the support I have received from people around you, including, and that really makes me thank for being on this journey,
Yeah.
receiving all the support, and
Yeah.
I don't take any of it for granted.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that I'm able to contribute a little bit in
Of
in
course.
your amazing life. Okay, so I mean, I knew you for some time now. I have also seen your journey, but not as much as I would love to know. So it's been 5 years, right, since you've started Oleg. So before we go really deep into this, what is the main customer problem that Oleg solves today?
Yeah. So I will go back to 2021
Okay.
as we pivoted
Yeah.
into B2B space.
Hmm.
We did not have a very clear idea about what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
We discovered the problems while talking to the customers out there. And since it was the pandemic time, we started with digitalization of retail experiences. Back in those times, we built an analytics and traffic management solution. I did it for around a year and a half. And then we figured out that there is a much bigger problem out there, and a lot of businesses are focusing towards sustainability.
Yeah.
So then we pivoted into enabling circularity for businesses through our
Yeah.
SaaS solutions. So
Okay.
today we have three core product solutions, which we call as 3Rs. One is the repair, second is re-commerce, and third is rental. So
Okay.
we enable circular business model for large retailers like Decathlon, H&M, IKEA through these three core solutions that we have.
Okay. Fantastic. So just reiterating this part. So you've got the rental, correct me if I'm wrong, rental, re-commerce, and what was the last one?
Repairs.
Repairs. Okay. So very briefly, how do these three things fit into someone like a decathlon? What is the value addition that these three pillars bring in today?
Got it. I'll take an example. Let's say you are one of Decathlon customers, and let's say you already own a bicycle from Decathlon and you have been riding it for a year. And
Yeah.
after a year, there is some issue with the bike.
Yeah.
Now, instead of leaving the bike parked in your garage or buying a new one, how about having an option to get the product repaired or get it serviced proactively directly from the brand instead of going to a local mechanic or getting it done from outside. So that's what the solution does, where you as a customer can directly interact with the brand. You can choose the category for which you want a repair or a service, you can choose the fulfillment mode that, hey, do you want
Yeah.
to get it serviced at home, or do you want to visit the nearest store, or do you want a pick and delivery? So all those things, and then in the back end, all the operations are tied together. The second one is, let's say you have evolved in the usage of the product. You have used this product for 4 years and now you want to upgrade. But before upgrading, if you want to get rid of your current product, so instead of dealing with a marketplace like a Carousel or a
Where you
Thrive or
can
any
essentially
others,
sell it.
you can
Yeah.
directly sell it back to the brand, and that's
Okay.
what we enable.
And that is re-commerce.
That is re-commerce, which is
Okay.
buyback and resell.
Okay.
And third use case is a lot of consumers, Gen Zs in particular, we are seeing this trend. They're becoming more and more conscious of the environment, and they don't want to invest in the ownership of the product. So what if you want to just rent from the brand or take it on subscription for a considerable period? That's what we enable through our third solution, which is rentals.
Okay. Fantastic. I love how this whole thing ties back to circularity and sustainability. And on this podcast, we've had people talk about how we can really help, save the world in different ways. We've spoken about wetlands and so on and so forth. So this is a very new take that businesses can do. Like there is, of course, the GHG accounting and reporting side that everybody considers today is sustainability, but it's not really. I mean, that's just accounting, right? But what you are focusing on here is circularity. So tell us a little bit more about what circularity is. And I'm getting the sense of how this business also works. But yeah, just tie it back for us here. From
Before
a
I
business
answer,
perspective.
got it. Before I answer that, I just want to again reflect back on our own understanding of this term. So this was around 2 years back, and how did it come to us? Is when we were speaking to a couple of our clients who typically are either the chief sustainability officers or sometimes also chief digital officers, and I distinctly remember in two of the conversations with two different logos, it came up that so far the journey with Olik has been great, but what is your vision for sustainability? And that was our first exposure into this world.
Yeah.
And then we just went out and tried to get deeper into it, that what does it mean and what are some of the real problems out there.
Yeah.
And then we spent around 6 months getting to the depth of the space. And after 6 months, we concluded that, we probably are not the best builders in the world of sustainability because A, it is huge. So we really need to narrow it down. And one of the subsets of that space was circularity. So what it essentially does is, and what we rather at Olik do is we enable these circular business models for large retailers. At the moment, we are dealing with enterprise segment where the focus is that how do we enable customers to use a product today wisely and in a responsible manner without compromising the needs of the future generation. So point being, let's say if there's a consumer might have extra dollars, but if does not see enough usage of the product, so can we educate this user to probably consider taking this product on rent if, let's say, they are only going to use it for a few weeks to a few months, and then give it back to the brand and let it find another consumer for that product. Similarly, if there is some minor issue with the product which is fixable, how about getting it repaired or fixed instead of discarding this product and buying a new one? So all of it ties back to the concept of circularity. And with these three core product verticals that we have, it completes the circularity.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the ideas that also comes to my mind when I think about this is you see iPhones, right? Now it has reduced, but previously I remember every 1.5 years people were buying a new iPhone. Just imagine everybody in the world doing that. There is so much wastage, right? And of course you will eventually sell it to a mom and pop shop who's going to refurbish a bit and then sell it to somebody else, and that kind of thing would happen. But if an enterprise today is buying this back, right, then I think that makes a very strong point for sustainable business models. And I'm so glad that Oleg has figured this out with some of the big brands that is there today.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're bang on to that. And Apple is definitely one of the iconic businesses. It's a generational business. I'm myself a huge fan of how they have built the model out. And they are also doing a lot of things on the path of sustainability. And for us, as I said, that we learned it from our customers. We sensed we could identify that there is a gap. And while there are a bunch of players working on the accounting side, on the GHG, ESG emissions and all, we could identify a clear gap in terms of enablers out there. And that's where we sense that we can fill that gap, and we decided to venture into that space.
Nice. Wonderful. So, to put it very simply, and I'm trying this, but Olik enables retailers, big retailers, become more sustainable by allowing users to resell, upgrade, as well as rent out their own products.
Yeah, that's right. Or in short, enabling a circular business model for
Yes.
these businesses.
Okay. Now, with that understanding of Olik, let's go a bit deeper into the business itself. So, are you guys profitable? Are you guys in the black, or are you all getting to?
So one of the core beliefs that we have had, as we pivoted from B2C to enterprise B2B SaaS spaces, both me and my co-founder sat down and had that conversation that what is a long-term goal? And there are no right approaches, wrong approaches to it. Do we want to build a venture backed company from day one, or are we going to focus on profitability right from day one? What is it, and what is the kind of culture we want to create? So some of the things were very clear to both of us. We were very strongly aligned on them. One of the alignments was around profitability. So we have focused on unit economics and profitability right from day one. And how we have been able to drive those, again, if I just break it down in terms of how do we shape our cost decisions. For example, we are very, very focused on pouring in our investments towards the initiatives where we see the impact of maximum growth. Second, when it comes to operations, we have kept them as lean as possible. For example, by being on cloud versus, in certain instances where we were asked, or we also had an option to go on-prem. Again, instead of renting out our own office space, we were working out of co-working space, which offers a lot of flexibility and then thereby is easy on the P&L. Then the third thing on the cost side, I would say, is seeing the repetitive growth or the retention instead of burning, where we just see that, oh, there is a chance of getting that superlative growth. We rather take those decisions based on the actual performance, on the actual impact on the P&L, and then decide whether we need to pour in the investment, or do we just blow it out in the hope of a scalability that may come. So we have always chosen the former path.
Okay. So help me break down the last bit, which is before you'll make a decision, you see an impact. What is the impact on P&L, right? Give me a scenario. You can take any scenario where you want to put an investment in. And how would you work through this in Olik?
Got it. So one of the key challenges that worldwide we have seen, and it's quite common to a lot of enterprise SaaS businesses, particularly in their early years, where Olik also is in. There are a lot of customization requirements that come in from large enterprises. It's a lot of years to maybe a decade or more, where product might become very standardized, and a company comes into a position of saying that this is the product, we take it or leave it. Until then, it's always a journey. Which leads to a lot of customization requirements. So has it been with us as well? We have had to take some very difficult calls to say a no to our customer requirements. Sometimes they have been altogether new products where we knew that if we took up those products in our roadmap and developed them, we would still make money. But it tied back to our decision of, if we put in investment into it, what are the chances of scalability? How will this replicate? How will we be able to replicate the solution to 100 other logos? And if we did not see a very clear road ahead there, a lot of times we have decided to rather put down that opportunity.
Okay. So you've said no to dollar that is just coming in.
And where we don't see enough scale, let's say, where we just see that the available market might be very, very limited. It could just be an opportunity for a client or two. So we have turned down
of custom projects.
Custom projects, yes.
Okay. Okay. So now let's say a scenario that I want to give you, because as a SaaS business, this is often the question. So you charge your customers, let's say on a annual basis or a monthly basis, but you've also got to hire a strong team to be able to build this, right? And not often that one customer's monthly subscription is going to cover the cost of this, right? So it's not a one-to-one. It's not as simple as a consulting or a service business where it is multiples. Okay, one person's cost, the revenue covers like 2 to 3 times of one person's cost. So this is the difference in SaaS and this, which is the reason why also SaaS businesses take VC funding in the beginning to be able to cover these costs. So how is that? How has it worked with Olik? Because it's a very interesting space. You guys are SaaS, charging SaaS, and at the same time you are looking at profitability. So tell me this maths.
No, I mean, that's a great question. So for us, it took a couple of years, but I would again say that we hit the profitability milestone much earlier than a lot of other SaaS businesses.
Yeah.
The reason is, and I mean, of course, that is
Kept your
also a
overheads
function
low.
of how much is our base, which is still, not as big. We are still not a multi-million-dollar ACV business. But the reason how we have been able to drive that is, again, in terms of we have never thought of building a mountain right from day one. So I do remember our initial set of paid clients. The journey was being very simplistic, having customer interactions, and then we just sense that, what are the things to develop where we can monetize it earlier than rather than later. So
Okay.
we picked up those things in the roadmap. Of course, some of those decisions and some of those interactions were tricky,
Yeah.
and we had to drive them in a certain manner so that clients also agree to that. In terms of, I would say, how we did the customer interactions. Let's say if there's an entire roadmap and or for the customer also there was a vision for a certain product, how we prioritize some of those things in the roadmap where we saw that, okay, if we develop these things, the path to monetization will be faster than,
Okay.
let's say, option two. So
Right.
that is the direction that we tried giving to those interactions. You talked about the talent. That is one area where we have been quite fortunate. I'm very proud of the team that we have. It's a small team, but a rock solid team that we have been able to put together at Olik. More than 85% of the folks have been with us right from day one.
Okay.
So that the point that I'm trying to say here is that it seems like it feels like everyone at Olik is a mini CEO with a lot of accountability, customer first mindset, and everyone is passionate about the same vision that not only me and Mohit have. So that also what it has led to is not a lot of people have just tried jumping the ship, and with by the advent of being in the space,
Yeah.
they have also gained a lot of knowledge which has in turn gotten passed on to the product. So we have overall been lucky in that tangent as well.
How big is your team?
So at the moment, we have had phases on this as well. And the B2C, we were 27 members at our peak, and then we had
Wow.
to restructure. At the moment, we are a 10-member team. And again, very lean. Seems, everyone in the team seems to be doing more than what probably they can take, it seems at times. But yeah. And as I say, super lean, but very efficient. Frugality is one of the core values which
Yeah.
every team member also embraces. And yeah, I'm super proud of that.
Amazing. Okay. So we spoke about profitability and we spoke about how to keep things lean and how you've managed to build a SaaS business while keeping your costs also very low. And of course, I think one thing that came out was on the monetization part. So build things that can monetize quickly so that you can be in the black. Did you guys raise funds anytime during the journey?
Yeah. So we did raise some funding from a couple of angel investors and an early stage VC fund. And then again, our approach has been to use it wisely. The frugality never went out the window as a core value. So while even when we raised, it was very clear to the entire team that we will not deviate from some of our core values. I talked about that. How do we deploy those funds? How do we take decisions on where to spend on product development or expanding the business development teams? So it was always maximizing the initiatives where we see the maximum impact first. How do we identify new geographies?
Yeah.
Again, one of the core areas where I have seen in past, I myself learned from my last experience before I started Olik, that sometimes, just choosing a wrong geography leads to massive losses and at times forces the company towards a shutdown. So we have again been very, very wise and thoughtful about choosing the geographies, not trying to expand our feet too early at too many places.
Yeah. Okay.
We still remain ambitious of some of the new geographies, but at the same time, only when we are ready to be able to cater to those geographies is when we plan to venture into them.
Okay. So I have a question on this, on going into the geographies and talking about expansion, but I will come back to that after I understand a little bit more about your stories around business development. So we'll come back to that later. But right now, my question to you is, now let's say you're making $100 a year, right? What is the percentage that you usually will spend, and what are the areas that you will invest in within your company, just to tie back to all the conversation that we've had before this?
So at the moment, I would say, and that stands true for a lot of SaaS businesses as well. Thick portion of the P&L is spent towards the manpower and talent. That's true for us as well. But one thing where we are changing, I mean, we are seeing a huge change in last 1 to 1.5 years. When we look at our spends in marketing, 3 years back versus now, I mean, I'm just doing a like to like comparison considering the same base, that has also gone down. For example, for us, we have been very, very selective of the channels where we spend. We don't do a spray and pray anymore. To talk about the specifics, we have kind of done some experiments and concluded that, and a blind outbound doesn't really move the needle. It may, help us with a couple of leads or even two digit leads, but when we look at how many of them are converting to the eventual dollars, that probably is
It's
a very,
less.
very low number. So a blind outbound does not really move needle in particularly the space that we are in. So we reduced our efforts towards those channels. Again, with regard to SEO, we have been very, very selective. We have done several experimentations on the content part, product content, and then identifying how do we shape the funnel so that the entire funnel from the top to the conversion is healthy. So those have been some of the experiments for us, and then we have taken our own learnings in terms of marketing spends. And the third area which now we are seeing, and we still have to go a long way, is in terms of the cost of development thanks to AI.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just talking about 2 years back to today. I would say now the cost of development has come down massively. It's a fraction of what it was 2 years back. So not only the cost, the cost has come down, and the time to market, the speed has become X. And gone are those days. We will also be now rethinking our strategy in terms of what I started with earlier in the conversation, saying a no to a lot of custom developments. But now with a lot of tools out there, we are also rethinking that start retaking some of those projects where we see that just building a new feature or doing some integration is not as long a process as it was 2 years back, right? And then by the advent of it, if it can be profitable, then why not look at that opportunity? So those are some of the interesting changes that we are seeing in the industry.
So on let's say on the marketing spend, right? The first part, so you mentioned that in your first earlier years, you spent more in marketing, and then now you don't spend as much. How much is the reduction roughly in terms of percentage?
There was a time when we were spending around, and that is where
The
before
context of
before figuring out our playbook, we were also spending around 28 to 30% of the total spends on marketing because we were not sure of what is going to hit for us, what is not. And if I look at it, we would be in single digits. One of the reasons for that also is, I mean, is because one of the core promises has been profitability, so we don't really want to let go of it in the hope of if we do these spends, there could be this additional revenue stream or these many new opportunities that will unlock. Rather, our approach has been that once there is some revenue, and then we deploy a portion of it into growth, so that we are not too dependent on any external funding for our sustenance.
Yeah. Okay, great. And when it comes to business development versus software product development, what is the ratio you maintained now between the two? And how has that changed from before, or if it has? I'm sure it has, because you said the cost of development has gone down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are still learning along the way. We are definitely not one of the early adopters in that space, but I definitely see in next 2 quarters there would be some rapid shift within our way of operating and structure in that part. Today, if I look at it, it's still more inclined towards the software development in
Okay.
terms of the spends that we do on people. But I see that getting balanced in next 2 to 3 quarters,
Yeah.
simply because now it is so much faster to develop and fractionally lower.
So that frees up your dollars to put in business development and sales.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think this is great. It's like creating a little bit of a playbook for CEOs or founders who are in the SaaS business, and they need to know where can they budget what, right? So how much should they spend on marketing? Definitely less than, depending on the industry, I guess. If you're a B2C, then that's a whole different level of spend that you're
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
B2B doesn't make sense as much to spend, but rather you spend more on your business development and product development. Okay, fantastic. So let's talk about the exciting part. So as a early stage company, you managed to crack some of the really big names in this space. So there is IKEA, you worked with Decathlon, worked with H&M. Tell us about this journey, how did this happen? It's very unheard of, I feel. It's not that easy as well. So yeah, how did that happen?
I would say that's simply brute force and shamelessly persistent.
I like it.
So, as I said in the beginning, we did not start with a clear vision of the problem that
Yeah.
we had in our mind,
Yeah.
that we want to go after it. We
Yeah.
rather discovered it on field after interacting with our customers. And, it just puts me back to that interesting time when we made a pivot. We started with a very, very simple appointment booking system for one of the largest global sports retailers, because that was the pandemic time and everyone was worried about a safe entry to their stores and controlling the traffic. So we built it out for them. And that was the starting point. The beauty of that entire practice was we built some relationships, and that is what I mean by being persistent. I remember even during those times, I would personally just go down to 10 to 15 stores every 2 to 3 days, talk to department managers, talk to store managers, that what additionally can be done around this solution so that it makes your life easier in current times. So we got a lot of those inputs and did that entire cycle of building it out again, the next iteration, collecting
Yeah.
the feedback.
This was before you guys sold it to them, or this was
It was before we sold it to them.
Okay.
When we were in the mode of figuring out what to build,
Yeah.
and just build something, the first version of the product, doing iteration, and on the
Yeah.
journey to be able to monetize it.
Okay.
So that's how we did.
So here you are going to 10 to 15 stores wearing a mask, I suppose.
Of course, wearing a mask. Yeah.
How can they make this appointment booking become better, or
Yeah.
what are the other features they need?
What are the other
Okay.
things that are worth building so that they can adopt it for additional use cases? And that's how we were eventually able to monetize it after, I think, around 8 months. And the beauty of that exercise was, while we were doing those interactions with a couple of clients, and then there were some successes, a lot more rejections, but it gave us a full perspective of the problems out there from the lens of businesses. And
Okay.
I'm here talking about majorly enterprises to mid markets. So that helped us shape the product vision for that first solution, what is required, what is worth building, and then again, we ignored a lot of requirements where we did not sense the monetization opportunity, and we said, okay, I mean, interesting, but we can probably park it for later.
Okay.
So that has how the journey been. And I remember the first dollars coming in, that was after after many months of doing this iteration. And then this was from one of the global furniture retailers. I had made the pitch to them 8 months before they got back to us,
Right.
just trying to check if we were still alive by then.
Yeah.
Right. So that was a very interesting time. And
And this
we
was IKEA, I think.
Oh yes. So I mean, I approached them 8 months prior to them getting back.
And what did
Had
you
to.
tell them 8 months ago? Like, tell us more about this.
I would say I just pitched a presentation without actually having a
A
full-fledged
product.
solution around
Okay.
at that point in time. That this is what we have, and then try to do a validation with them, trying to understand the landscape from their side.
And this was after you did this whole retail learning and, understanding the problem in the space, right? So
I
this
would
is
say it was happening parallel.
happening parallelly. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in
That's
that
good.
time, we met people right from entrance to the mid level there,
Yeah.
and eventually we got an answer. No, in the first 2 months that at
Yeah.
the moment they didn't really see a need for it, but they'll get back. And in those 7 to 8 months, we were doing constant customer interactions, learning about the problems, and then we had something far from any mature solution that I can say. Then it was again after 8 months when again I just it was a part of the follow-ups were have always been a part of the process and is true for any enterprise sales. So when I followed up, thankfully this time they said that yeah, it'll be interesting to engage again and look at what we have. And then eventually we were able to strike a deal. We were able to do a project with them for one of their new store launches in India. And then, that's how we got our first dollars. That still remains as one of the most beautiful memories of the journey that we have had. I mean, of course, there are so many more special moments, right? From, the fundraise to expanding the team to getting some of the PR coverages. But if I have to pick up on one of the most beautiful ones, I would still count back to the first dollar coming in, because it's not really about whether or not it was a big amount. Probably it wasn't. We have, as we look at it today, we might have so many more deals of a higher amount, but the sense of fulfillment and satisfaction it gave, that the solution that we have developed got validated and it is solving some real world problem. So that was quite fulfilling for the entire team, and that gave us the confidence and motivation to scale it further and then just replicate.
I want to double down on something here. Right, not double down, double click. One of my mentors keeps using this. It's a nice way of going deeper. Okay, so you said that at that point in time, you guys were iterating on the product, the booking application that was what you were building. How did you manage to even get the very first contact with IKEA?
So I have been, as one of the founders, and again, one of the core values was profitability, which comes from frugality and being lean. So it was very clear to me that there's a lot on my shoulders.
Yeah.
There's no one else but me who is responsible to get the initial few clients and some deals. So I was using a mixed approach. I was using my own personal network as well to approach people, or asking my second connects. Let's say if I know you and I see that there is a prospect that you are connected with, then asking you for introduction. And then also, after I got some of the customer interactions where initially I would rather say I approached it with the entire approach of product development as a product manager. Yeah. So the initial journey was, I would say, I wore the hat of a product manager in terms of discovering the problem, doing customer interactions, and then finding the journey, right? What is the right journey to build for the customer? What is the right journey to build in the back end for the merchants? And then putting it together, again, validating it, and then getting into the iteration mindset that, presenting the first version, taking feedback, second version, third version, and eventually the monetization.
Yeah.
So that is the path that we took. And as I said, until then, until we had a second or third version of the product, I wasn't really doing any cold outbound. It was more from personal network or asking my connections to make introductions with the prospects. And only once we had some product is when I also started doing cold outbound.
Okay.
And it was, much later that we hired our first recruit in the business development.
Okay. Fantastic. So, by approaching things from a very product development point of view, you were able to also crack some of the key decision makers in these companies, right? Now, these 8 months went, and you followed up with them. What was this follow up like? If you could break this down for us. So, is it what are the activities that you do to continuously engage a lead from your first interaction, after which they've said, no, we're not ready at this point in time, to eventually converting them? So this is a very beautiful story. And yeah, break this down.
So in the world of sales, we call it a cadence. So,
Okay.
maintained a very personalized cadence for different clients. So that is one area where, which I think has helped us, and I have been a believer of it. Now, in the AI world, we hear it so much more, sending personalized messages. Much before when it was there, I have always believed that a spray and pray rarely works.
Spray and pray.
So, in terms of my cadence, let's say if I'm sending seven
Yeah.
different messages to a given prospect, it has been very, very personalized based on doing enough and more research around that business. For example, if it was IKEA, I would study the problems in their business by visiting the stores, by also looking up online, by looking at some of their even annual reports, that where is the focus, also listening to their leadership, that what are the focus areas, and then forming my content or my cadence around it. So that what it did was, a lot of times the language that I was using was very close to where the focus of the organization was. So that also helped. For example, why did we decide on the positioning around circularity and not sustainability?
Yeah.
There's a reason to it, where we felt that if we talk about sustainability, it might be too vague and might not make things very, very clear that what part of sustainability. And then when it comes to circularity, we did look out that which are the businesses that are investing in the circularity space, while it is a subset of sustainability. And then choosing our language when we do the content on any of our channels, be it website, to our LinkedIn, to when we reach out to them,
Yeah.
very closely curating it around their lingo.
So that was IKEA, the very first dollars that came in. So tell me this, because you started this company in Bangalore, right? And it's one of the most fantastic places today to also start a SaaS company or a software company. And then you moved to Singapore. So what was the whole reasoning behind this?
So typically, India has been a build market over a buy. So once we unlocked a few clients in the beginning, it was very clear to us that we will need to expand the geography beyond India, because, as I said, it's more of a build market versus buy. So then we had a choice, that do we go to the big markets out there, which is the US and the North America region, or do we look at Europe, or do we look at Asia first?
Yeah.
And we chose the latter. The reason is, we did not have enough money to directly venture into the US, and we were very clear that we don't want to lose focus from our unit economics, from the approach of building profitably.
Yeah.
So even when we raised, we did not deploy it directly into the big markets in the hope of being able to figure out a GTM.
Right.
So the reason to rather choose Asia is what shaped our decision to identify Singapore as the regional headquarter, because it is very well accepted, having a Singapore-based entity and presence here.
Yeah.
Pretty much unlocks the Southeast Asia region, because what we also learned, that for a lot of enterprises, the decision makers are sitting in Singapore.
Yeah.
So that was the decision to to move to Singapore, and then starting up with a Singapore entity to cater to the region.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Now, so there was this one point that came to my head when you were talking about moving from Bangalore to Singapore. Do you think that now that you're in Singapore, you have an easier access to Europe and other buy markets?
Outside of Asia, I don't think it gives much of a benefit, because each region has its own nuances, including, localization factors. So we have tried that approach and have been far from successful in being able to unlock the clients in Europe or even US while sitting in Asia.
So if you want to do business in Europe or US, it's better that you're there.
Oh yeah, and I strongly feel if you are dealing in the enterprise segment, it is so much important to meet people than just dealing with them virtually. Forming relations is super important because rarely does a buyer, in particularly the early stages of ventures like ours, rarely do they invest in the product. It's more on the people, which is why I feel it is super important to be physically present in the region of your GTA.
Okay, okay. Yeah, which was going to be my next question. Which one do you think has more weightage? Is it the relations or is it the product?
I would say in the early stages, any day it's the relations.
Right.
If you ask me for a mature company, it could be the latter because, after a point you are able to justify the value
And then you
through
can
the
do
product.
Zoom sales.
Absolutely. But no doubt, I would
Yeah.
say it 100 times that in the early stages, until you have found a super strong product market fit, it's the relations that keeps you going.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so nice bridge because we're talking about relations. Let's start with the culture. I know you've touched a little bit about the culture in Oleg, but finding a right co-founder is actually a very difficult thing to do. How did you find Mohit and how did you all decide that you all want to do this business together?
Yeah. So, I mean, this was again something I was very clear about that building a venture is a long journey. It's not just a stint for a year or two or a few, maybe just 4 or 5 years. If it is successful or even moderately successful, it might be a much longer journey. And one of the most critical investments that I saw was the investment in co-founder. It for me was more important than raising the adequate amount of funding or building the best of product, getting the best of logos in the beginning. Because all of it is a part of the journey. Some of them might churn, but having a strong and aligned co-founder goes a long way.
Yeah.
So with that clarity in my head, my first and the best bet was to first look in my immediate network. So I looked inwards. And the questions that I asked myself was, what are the skills that I lack? And one of the core things, and it was very clear to me, is the coding skills.
Yeah.
While I do understand the product functionally really well, I'm able to connect the dots, but I haven't coded ever. I do understand the code, but there's a huge difference between just understanding and doing it
Generating
all by
code.
yourself. Yeah. And now the world is different, but I'm talking of 4 or 5 years earlier. So that was a clear gap that I identified, and with that, I started looking for people in my immediate network, and definitely, Mohit was one of the early thoughts I. Apart from Mohit, also I did check with a few friends and asked, had very honest, candid conversations around what stage of the life were they in,
Yeah.
what are some of the long-term goals, and in some cases where I rather saw that, or people who were probably more proficient than Mohit in coding, but there was a misalignment on other factors. I did not really go ahead, and with Mohit, a lot of things were aligned. He was equally passionate about building his own company, had a very strong technical background, having worked with some of the tech conglomerates, and that's how both of us came together. And an interesting part to it is Mohit and I knew each other for 14 years before we started working together. So we both studied together in our graduation days. So
Right.
that was a very strong foundation built on trust, and I feel that is super, super important when you're building a venture.
Yeah.
Maybe in our initial years, I was talking to Mohit much more than I was probably talking to my wife now.
Okay. Was Mohit married at that point in time?
No, neither of us was married, and both of us got married at a time gap of 1 year.
Okay.
But
After you all started.
yeah, so I got married in 2018, and we started the venture, in ideation mode, I would say somewhere around the mid of 20, the beginning of 2020. And I distinctly remember a time when I asked Mohit that it's time that you move into the apartment with me. My wife was moving cities for her job.
Yeah.
And that's where, Mohit and I just started the initial journey with the wife.
Okay, wow. Beautiful. From a whiteboard to, winning so many different logos and building this product. I think it's a fantastic journey. But tell me, would you have done this? Would you or Mohit have done this had you guys been married before?
I mean, if I go back to my mindset and
Yeah.
aspiration, I think I would still have chosen the path. Even, when I decided about starting up, I had a very candid conversation with my wife. I mean, I strongly feel that when you're starting up, it's never your individual decision,
Yeah.
particularly, if you're married. It's more like a family decision. So I sat her down, had a conversation with her. In our case, it was also a bit different because I had worked for almost a decade in the corporate world. So we had some deeper conversations around,
Yeah.
where is the end goal and what is it that we eventually want to achieve. But apart from those sides, being super aligned on and be clear about what are we jumping into in
Yeah.
terms of uncertainties. A great chance that for a few years we might not be able to crack the right problem in terms of financial uncertainties. The spends were only increasing while I was choosing the reverse path of letting go of the fixed paycheck and jumping into the world of uncertainties.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
having candid and clear discussions about it, and then a work-life balance as you jump into a startup world, it's far from a world of dreams. So I mean, for first few years, weekends were never weekends,
Yeah.
right? And you are always hustling. Being again very clear about it, which meant that we might have to compromise on a lot of our vacations, on the time that we get with each other and with family and friends.
Yeah.
So having that clarity, between the partners, I feel is
Yeah.
super, super important. And I feel that, if I have to thank one person on this journey, I would thank my wife. She has been an immense support for me. And I strongly feel that I have been able to continue on this path because of a strong support that has come from her always.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I because this is a very big decision and a very big impact that you have on the family itself.
Mhm.
And yeah, absolutely agree that you've got to have that kind of clarity and communication to deal with the uncertainties that come. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I've asked this question to a couple of others as well. But for a person who's thinking about starting up now, right? What is a good runway to have, a personal runway to have when you decide to make this switch?
Yeah.
Not switch, really. It's like breaking everything down and starting something.
I have a very different take on that.
Yeah.
I would, if I were to look at my runway or deciding my runway before jumping into it, I would look at the stage of life. It would be a different answer I would have when I was in my mid 20s to when I was in my late 20s, but still unmarried and still had a lot of risk appetite,
Yeah.
ready to experiment. And then maybe today when I'm in my mid 30s to what this answer would be if somebody asked me 5 or 6 years later.
Yeah.
So that is one part to it. And second, also with regard to how you are as a person, are you able to thrive in an ambiguous and in an environment of uncertainty?
Yeah.
If yes, then this is the world for you to explore. Because more often than never, you might be pivoting to the space that you're solving in. So if you can't really thrive in that world of uncertainty, you cannot adapt quickly and you lose your nerves, then I would just ask a person to reconsider the decision.
But Ashish, are you like that? Are you thrive in uncertainty? So there is one part which is adapting to uncertainty, which is different. But thriving in uncertainty is different. Where
Yeah.
would you put yourself in?
I would say, I mean, I am absolutely okay with ambiguity, but what I like to bring in is the structure to how you are navigating through it, which means that and that's a very good question in terms of when you're uh, operating in an ambiguous environment. Are you just taking any random road to travel? Or have you broken it down into smaller pieces and given some structure that, okay, within this, let's try to just find answer to these two things first.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I like to do. Instead of keeping it open ended forever and just, painting it in the box of ambiguity, rather put a structure into the space once you have jumped in.
Yeah, and that helps with the anxiety levels and whatever it is, because you know that you only have a couple of things that you need to first solve for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And that also, is able to make things simple instead of, working on 10 things at a time.
Yeah.
And everything being very, very complicated. I mean, that's my approach to just break it down and then just do smaller experiments.
Wonderful. Speaking about family, you have recently had an additional member who's joined your family, your son, which itself is a very beautiful experience. So, how has that changed you as a founder now?
Yeah. That indeed it has been one of the most fulfilling experience, and I would say post becoming a father, I think I have become more responsible in terms of understanding people, in terms of prioritization, that focusing my time on what truly matters. There might be 10 other things. Maybe earlier I would still be doing 3 other things just because I had more time. But now, I've become even more picky in terms of deciding where I want to spend my time. So those would be the things. And I think in terms of also work-life balance, I was always a believer of it, that one should not just be hustling for the heck of it, but
Yeah.
I think now I have become a bit more toned down towards it, and generally, I think have become more grounded after this experience.
Wow. And when it comes to, family, starting a family in the sense having a kid and things like that. So it's a big decision on both mother and father. Did you and Amisha ever have this conversation way back? Like we're gonna do whatever we're doing for the next 10 years or 5 years or 3, 4 years. What was your conversation like?
Yeah. Again, we have probably had that discussion so many times in the past, and not only between the two of us, but also with some set of close friends. And one common trend that we found was that, we as millennials, why we are probably earning much more than what probably, our parents
Fathers
were
and
or
families
early
did.
generations
Yeah.
were. But our expenses are also much higher.
Right.
We probably live paycheck to paycheck, and a lot of close friends share that perspective that at some point in time they would want to start a family, but they are not sure of the stability in the career. They are not sure of their finances. So along those lines, we also discussed quite a few times. But then we, when we had a deeper conversation, it boiled down to, do we really want a child? If yes, then probably this is the best time, because I mean the world at large is uncertain.
Yeah.
And we got to figure out, we do believe, in our capabilities, that no matter what comes, we will be able to sustain. So
Right.
that was one of the beliefs. And then we, also felt that now we are in our mid 30s. If we want it, we rather have it now
And later.
versus, much later, and then where we are not able to match the energies of what the child demands. So those were also
Considerations.
some of the considerations.
So the best time is usually now, whenever you're ready, basically.
Oh, yeah.
So spoke about your family life, spoke about Oleg, spoke about everything. But what is very interesting to me is that you come from a community in India, which is inherently a mercantile community where business trade is at the core of it, right? It's called the Baniya community. So, how did that, if it has, influenced your decisions in Olik and growth in Olik? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I strongly feel that I think unconsciously there are a lot of things that I have learned from the traditional Baniya way of doing business, while the modern SaaS ventures, as a direct comparison, are very different than these traditional businesses. The way,
Massively,
yeah,
right?
but the way I have learned from these traditional Baniya businesses are a strong focus on profitability, right? From the early days, for them, business means profit. They will rarely be doing things for the heck of it, or chasing vanity metrics, or burning cash for scale.
Right.
So, which is why I said that focus on profitability has been there right from day one. The second one would be, building a business for a long term. What I mean by that is, I mean, I have learned it from my own family. I have learned it from seeing it from people around, that a lot of us, you would see them building business for generations and not just surviving funding cycles. And how do they do it is by placing a huge and huge focus on customer relationships. They will just go over and beyond to make those relationships, grow them deeper, and then just retain their customers pretty much forever. So
give me an example of one such business. Like, you don't have to give names, but what type of business?
oh, look at a lot of jewelry businesses out there. I mean, I know of so many people who have just been going to a specific jewelry shop for last 3 generations, right? There is a very strong trust with between the two parties,
Okay.
and highly possible that for the same product they might just get it at a 10 or a 20% lower price elsewhere, but because there is such a strong trust of authenticity and so many other things, that relationship exists. And personally, what I have learned from my own family, from my father, uh, is resilience. That in business there will be downturns, there will be massive down cycles as well, but those are the testing times, and it has been for us as well. As I said, when we pivoted, for a few months we did not have any clarity of where is the revenue going to come from, while having some fixed expenses. And also, time to time there will be churns, but those are the testing times, and being resilient, standing the ground with utmost confidence is what
How do
I've
you
learned.
how do you turn around a downturn in your business? What have you learned from your family or the community about?
Sticking to the basics, that inherently believing that when you're building a business for a very long term, so even the down cycle is not going to be there forever. So that inherent belief, but at the same time not being just complacent about it, that it will go by itself. There will not be a magic wand, but identifying what is the problem at that moment, and even if it is just solving 1% every day around it, but then eventually you come out of it. So a very strong belief around that the down cycle is not there forever, and acting in the right direction. I'm a firm believer that helps us to
Just keep
see.
at it, keep doing, breaking it down, as you said, small achievable goals.
Yeah.
And then keep working towards
Yeah.
that, right?
And fourth thing I would add is, at the same time being audacious. While it is important to be persistent, but keeping an open mindset and open eyes. If something is not working out, you just, I mean, that's the modern way, where we have to blend the two systems. You structure your problem well, you define your experiments well, but if it is not working, then just don't get too attached to it. And that is what we embrace when we moved from B2C to B2B. Our first child probably was B2C. I do remember my co-founder, because he had built the initial product. He was at that point in time a bit more attached than me, and I was also blessed with a couple of great advisors who were able to bring me out very quickly out of it. But being really audacious about taking tough decisions if something is not working. So for us, it has been a pivot, and also, throughout the journey, taking some business decisions. If something is not working, then just taking a bold call and moving out of it.
Okay. So audacity, having that or doing those things that actually make someone say, "How dare you do this?" I think that's my definition of audacity. Has actually played in different ways for me as well, and it is tough to do this. It is not a natural thing for somebody to put down your foot and say, "This is it," right? Like, we've done enough, or we've tried this. Let's change this, because this way doesn't work. Let's work out something else. I think this is one of the important qualities of being an entrepreneur, and it comes as you keep doing and keep at it.
One thing also I would like to add, I mean, I see a lot of founders around me, and it's a known thing that entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey. But this is one thing that I always tell my co-founder, my close founder friends, as well as some of the companies that I advise, that the responsibility to solve that also lies on us. And there are, we don't have to do too many complicated and complex stuff for it. There are only basic things. One, create your set of confidence where you can share your vulnerabilities along the journey. Because otherwise, including me, maybe I'm always selling, but there need to be some confidence where you can be vulnerable, where you can share some of your innovations. Second, be patient, and that ties back to, if I were to advise someone on whether or not to start up, right, I would strongly say that just know your situation well and be more patient than how much you have ever been in your past. Because this journey might take a lot of time. It might take n number of experiments before you figure it out. Very, very important to be patient. And again, how do you do that? You got to figure it out. For example, I do believe that, one has to focus on their physical and mental health. Right. So keep doing your regular workouts, exercises, or whatever gives you that
focus
that
on yourself.
relief. And in the definition of hustle, it should not be misunderstood as sitting in front of the system for 18 hours a day and saying that I'm hustling. It will take its toll somewhere else. And that I also feel is a responsibility of a founder himself or herself to solve. So being aware of it and doing it systematically, I feel goes a long way.
Fantastic. I think that was perfect summary to everything that we've spoken about. How are you feeling now? There's so much that you've done.
Absolutely. I mean, in short, if I just look back, it has been a truly rewarding journey. I'm super happy. I would not trade it for anything else than, the journey in last 4 to 5 years. And at the same time, I feel truly grateful and thankful to have got the opportunity, to have gotten all the support from my ecosystem, to be able to work on something that I'm truly passionate about. So I never take it for granted. Always very grateful for it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ashish, for coming to the show, sharing so much with us, and for the rest of the Out of Office Show audience who watches the show. So thank you all. Yeah, you can find Ashish on LinkedIn if you want to bug him.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thanks for
so
having me,
much.
and it was a great conversation.
I'm glad.